This is the Joe Mullins Show, celebrating the best place in the world to live, shop, work, and play. And now, your host, Joe Mullins.
Hello, Florida. This is Joe Mullins of the Live, Work, Shop, Play Show, and welcome to the Joe Mullins Show, aired out of Tampa, one of the greatest cities in the greatest state in the country. Here today and many weekends, why Florida is the model state in the greatest country in the world. Why is everyone coming to Florida? It's because we do things differently down here. We actually do them the way America was meant to be: freedom and accountability. And with today's guests, we're going to talk about accountability. We have the CFO of Florida, Blaise Ingoglia. Blaise, welcome to the show today.
Thanks for having me.
Did I get that right?
You did. Very good.
I love it. You know, I've been practicing my Italian, and I've got it right.
A+.
So
I give you an A+ for the pronunciation.
I really worked on that, and it was one of those fearful words. But me being also Southern and from Georgia originally, there's certain words that I just can't say. And, we have our own dialogue down there. But now the CFO position, I've lived in many different states, and I've traveled across the country, and that's not a position I hear a lot of times. It's probably buckled in or bottled up with other positions in other states. But the CFO of Florida, let's talk about what that position really is and what all you do. What does the CFO do?
So the first thing is people need to know that I'm sort of like redefining the role of the CFO. The CFO is an important position. It's a cabinet level position. I sit on the cabinet with the governor, with the attorney general, myself, and the ag commissioner. So it's very, very important. But the three things that I'm concentrating on are the audit authority that we have, because we have immense audit authority granted to me in Florida's Constitution. I can go in any entity, either public or private. I can go in and check under the hood, if you will, to see if the money is being spent wisely and if they're wasting money. And those are the FAFO audits you have seen. I'm also the state fire marshal. I oversee a lot of the firefighters. I oversee urban search and rescue teams. Actually, I was out there training with them today in Orlando, and they are the first line of defense after natural disasters to make sure that we are helping and saving lives, getting people out of those situations. And the other big thing that many people don't realize is that I actually have a law enforcement division. I have 300 sworn law enforcement officers, and we do financial crimes. In addition to doing financial crimes, we are actually augmenting and helping out a lot of local sheriffs and police chiefs doing online stings to catch online sexual predators preying on young children. So those are the three big things. But I also oversee the Treasury. I also oversee unclaimed property. I'm also, believe it or not, the chief mortician. I oversee the pension fund as part of the cabinet. I sit on the state board of immigration enforcement. I tell everyone I have almost as many jobs as Marco Rubio has.
Now, I've heard many times the CFO, and in the past ones, you kind of look at them and they're the quiet accountants that walk in and they don't say much. And
that's not me.
That's not you.
That's not
I
me.
was going to say, that's not you. You've turned around and really rocked out of the 67 counties, probably 60 of them. The funny thing, before you really got going with it, there was a guy, he was a Democrat, and he said, well, he's just a Republican. He's going to go to all these Democratic cities and beat up on them and say this and say that, and it's a political stunt. And all of a sudden, you're going to red counties, and you're shocking them. They're coming in, and they're all excited to welcome you there, and by the time you leave, they're going, oh, shit, we just got called out on, exposed. Oh, shoot, I'm sorry. I got to watch the language here on the air. But you go to these counties, and you don't care what they are. You're there for one mission, and that mission is to do what a CFO would do in a company, go through and call. I compared this to Walmart. Walmart has a CFO. That CFO checks every one of those stores to make sure they're within budget, because one store could turn around and devastate a chain of them. We're 67 businesses in this county, 67 counties, in this state of Florida, 67 businesses. Every county operates like a business, and they have a budget.
I wish they operated like a business.
Yeah, I wish they did too. I use that loosely. But they should operate like a business. They have a budget. They have to live by it. But they also have the ability to do something a business can't do. They can spend, and then turn around and move money and manipulate it through things called
and
general
ask for
funds.
more
And
in
ask
the,
for more.
in the form of higher taxes. Yeah, a CFO of a company, the role is to oversee the books, right? And if something's wrong, if something doesn't look right, to investigate it. So I'm sort of doing the same thing, but I'm doing it through the lens of the taxpayer, where if I see taxes going up egregiously, and if I see local government spending increase to the tune of 100% over a 5 or 6 year span, I'm going to go in and I'm going to take a look at it. I'm going to look under the hood. I'm going to see what they're spending the money on, how large that government is growing, how many people that they're hiring. And my job, I view it as a taxpayer advocate. See, here's the thing. In Tallahassee, and government in general, everyone is looking out for their own interest, right? And that's where you get lobbyists from, right? In Tallahassee, you have lobbyists that work for Fortune 500 companies. They're there to protect their interests. You have nonprofits that employ lobbyists. They're there to protect their interests. You have government itself actually hiring
That's what
lobbyists.
I was going to say. Governments have lobbyists.
And
I
they
was
protect
shocked.
their interests. So your taxpayers are actually going to pay for a lobbyist and then lobby against you, the taxpayer, who are funding them in the first place. But very few people are up there actually acting as a taxpayer advocate and a lobbyist on behalf of the taxpayer. So everything I do, I look through it through that lens. Now, it doesn't make me the most popular people at the cocktail parties when I'm sitting there with people within government themselves, but it makes me very popular with taxpayers because they know that somebody is actually standing up for them.
Well, when you go to the gas pump or you go out to do things like make a decision with your 18-year-old child, like I am, is going to college, you have to take these things into consideration of budgets and how they're going to impact you and what you're able to afford. I've had to sit down with my children and have some very hard discussions with them about cutting back on certain things or not doing certain things. One of them is my son with DoorDash. He loves to order it. He loves to order. And I said, son, you're not going to grow up and be able to DoorDash every food meal you want. You're not going to be able to have people cater you and bring you food. You're going to have to go out and do some things. So that's the real world. But then government operates off we got an unlimited DoorDash. We got the big daddy. It's called the taxpayers. They're going to fund us and do whatever we need to do. And if they don't, we're going to manipulate them and make them think they're going to do without public safety. They're going to do without certain things like fire and medical and infrastructure, which you turn around and look at some of these communities, it doesn't look like they've touched their infrastructure in 50 years. They manipulate people to see that. So you coming in and calling it out, and especially going even deeper, calling it out where they're doing it from in funds like the general fund and other funds slush funds basically, that government have created and put names on. The public's not deceptive. We talked about it with property taxes and increases. When a government votes and keeps the tax millage rate the same, yet the property values skyrocketed, that's a tax increase.
It's a huge tax increase.
Yeah, but governments are arguing that it wasn't.
It's a political game that that people play, elected officials play, to try to give the appearance, the illusion that they're being good stewards of your tax dollars when in fact they're not. So let's go back to the case of Flagler County. Flagler County, we calculated that they could have reduced their millage rate by a whole 1.40 mils and cut their general fund budget upwards of $59 million. Now, what a normal government would do is say, hey, we cut your millage by 1/4 point. And they go, look, we're tax cutters. No, you're not. You could have cut it 1.4. Just because you cut it 0.25 doesn't mean that you're saving people money, because they're still seeing a huge tax increase. The higher the values go, the lower the overall millage rate should be. It's an inverse relationship. Property taxes go up, millage rate should technically go down. And that's how you keep government sane. So if your property taxes skyrocket and you're keeping millage rate the same, or if you're reducing it just marginally, it's still a huge net increase, tax increase to government.
Right. And when you call out this accountability, I've noticed I automatically know in my company, when I call out somebody inside my business, I own a lot of real estate. When I call out one of the people that work there, I don't want them to argue with me why they're right. I want them to acknowledge I've seen it, and I want them to try to do better. That's all I'm there asking them to do. That's all you're at there. You've been there. You said, look, I just want them to acknowledge it, become aware that they're doing it. Maybe they don't know. Maybe their managers, because of the sunshine laws, manipulating them or whatever, and they're doing that. But ultimately, at the end of the day, these officials that say it's not their fault and they start pointing fingers at different people, they vote for that budget. Flagler County, for that example, was a 5-0 budget, a 5-0 vote to approve that budget. They could have not approved that budget. But to go from 90-something million to 200 and something million in a year, or I mean, a few years, couple of years, that's a lot of increase. I don't have that kind of increase.
It should have, and that's a very good point. And that's a point that we bring up. It should have set off alarm bells when they saw the rapid increase and rise in the property receipts. But to your point, we'll go and we'll take Flagler County again, whose budget increased almost 120% over 6 years. Your income didn't go up 120% over 6 years.
No, it went down.
So why should governments? So government should never grow and outstrip the taxpayer's ability to pay for the government. But we are seeing that across almost every government in the state of Florida. There are some few exceptions. City of Orlando is actually, we calculated, and they have proven to be somewhat fiscally responsible. They are one of the more fiscally responsible.
And that's a Democratic city.
It's a Democrat city. And so I will sit here and, a lot of the more egregious spending in terms of dollar amounts, you take Orange County wasted $189 million, Jacksonville, Democrat controlled now, wasted $199 million, Miami-Dade $302 million, Palm Beach County $344 million, the People's Republic of Broward County $190 million. So those are very blue or very blue-leaning areas. But we go in. We criticize them as much as we criticize the red areas. Citrus County wasted $39 million. Flagler County wasted $59 million. You had Manatee County wasting $112 million. So we criticize the blue and the red, but we also praise. So the city of Orlando only wasted, and I say only, it was still wasted and excessively spent $22 million. But on a budget their size and a city of that size, it's not that much. It's a few percentage points over inflation and population growth. So they've shown to be fiscally responsible. But the key here is that the same methodology, the same metric that we use that showed that Flagler and Nassau was $53 million worth of excessive and wasteful spending. The same methodology that yielded that these governments were wasting all this money is the same methodology that proved that Orlando was actually good fiscal stewards of your tax dollars.
Well, and here's why I'm glad we're doing this show and we're talking about it. I had several people contact me and say, well, he came in and said they're wasting money, but he never proved it. He never stated the facts, never stated anything. And I stopped and I said, wait a minute. You weren't in that press conference then. He did state it. He did talk about where it was happening. The media didn't report it.
That's right. They did.
But he did state it.
I tell everyone who says that, they like, show me the receipts, show me the breakdown. I'm going to go watch the press conference because we go through it methodically.
You did. But the media didn't report it. And here on the government, for first time, I watched a conservative government praise media and say they were great. I couldn't believe the two got along and said it was, they all of a sudden, media doesn't lie, they're telling the truth. He didn't come in and say anything and give any facts.
If you are a deep Republican government, whether it's a city or a county, and the liberal media is running cover for you for your wasteful spending, there's a problem.
That was what I was shocked when I watched that. I saw the first time two entities that hated each other merge together and agree. And I went, you didn't hear the press conference then. And then when we followed up and did the show, we put it out there. And I just simply sent them the show and said, listen, all you got to do is hear this. Ask about the general fund. I said, I've known for years it was that. I was told if I said anything that I would be exiled from the county. And I said, I've known it and I've said it. And I even brought it up. When you mentioned the general fund, I died laughing inside going, oh, my God, he is really digging in deep.
Yeah. So this is why governments are so angry at me, because my FAFO audits, right? It's a play on what the kids say, FAFO, F around and find out, right? So it actually stands for Florida Agency for Fiscal Oversight. It's a play on words to get people to pay attention. I coined the phrase government gone wild in the mid 2000s because, and I created the videos and I started doing, it was almost the same exact thing that we're doing today in terms of local government spending, except I did it just in Hernando County back then. And we made some big changes in the budget there, but you had to call them out. But the reason why I tell that story is that this is not something new for me. I've been doing this and looking at local government budgets and understanding government budgets and know where they hide the dead bodies, and I know where they squirrel away their money, and I know how they use the idea of reserves as a slush fund where they tax them and they just build up this huge pile of cash. The local governments are angry because they know what they're doing, and I'm telling everyone what they're doing. That's what they're angry about.
Well, I watched it during COVID. They stuck, I think it was $10 million in the general fund. And they said, well, we got to keep a certain amount to keep our AAA rating. And that's what they were telling the public. But then they turned around and spent that $10 million on areas they weren't supposed to. And I said, well, you just spent the $10 million. Well, we didn't spend that $10 million. We spent the $10 million that we had sitting in the fund. It was technically not the $10 million they gave us. And I went, but now you're keeping it just.
I'm going to blow your mind right now. I'm going to tell you things, and your listeners are going to hear things that probably like 99.9% of the people just do not know. If a local government will tell you that they have to keep X amount of money in their bank account in order to keep a AAA rating, right? You can get a AAA rating with as little as 7 to 8% in reserves. But most governments will keep 20, 25% in reserves. And they say, we're doing that because we want to keep our AAA rating. They don't need that. It's just an excuse. And the other thing is that the difference between a AAA rating bond and a AA rating bond is like 0.001% in the interest rate. It's not that big of a difference.
Well, and it's the way the more money you got in there, the more you can spend it in different areas, but you keep and maintain a certain balance.
But the worst part about that is that they collect every year. Every portion of their budget every year is to collect money to go into reserves. To your point, It's a slush fund. Right. So if they have a $100 million budget and 15%, $15 million is going into reserve, every year they're collecting $15 million from the taxpayers that they didn't have to collect, and they're just sitting there with a big pot of money. But then they sit there and they cry poor and they need more money and they want to raise taxes. So there's a difference between the P&L and the balance sheet, right? The P&L is your revenues and your expenses. That's your general fund.
Right.
It shows how much is coming in, what your expenses are. So when we're talking about government spending, we are always fixated and concerned with the P&L portion of the budget. We're never, ever asking about the balance
Right.
of how much money that they have, because you could technically be deficit spending and not collect enough revenue in order to pay for your expenses, but sitting on a mountain of cash over here. No one ever asks that except for people like me, because I know the games.
Well, let's look at it this way. Minnesota's a perfect example. Here's the thing. I got a checking account. I have to keep a $10,000 balance in it. You give me $10,000 of grant money. I take that grant money and stick it in my account. I turn around and I buy a car for $10,000. And I still got my minimum balance in there.
Yeah.
Now, my argument is I didn't spend your $10,000 you gave me.
Because money is fungible.
I spent my personal money, but now I'm using your grant money for different than it was. Maybe it was for opioid education or whatever. I'm using that grant money differently. I'm using it to hold my reserve or hold my minimum balance so I'm not charged fees. And I go out and buy a new car. That's what the general fund, I watched them physically do stuff like that.
So let me expand on that, because you brought up ARPA money and the COVID money, and I think this is important to have this conversation in context. This is how this whole thing happened. So in 2019, 2020, COVID hit, right? So then there was an influx, a huge influx of money that came down from Biden spending, all the $1 trillion worth of COVID money, and local governments saw all this extra money pile into their coffers, right? And it was meant to help your local communities pay for the bills, right? Like the fire and the police and all that. They were still getting property tax. They never stopped getting property tax revenue.
Never did reduce it either.
They didn't reduce it.
We didn't.
So what they did was they took the extra money and they added more government employees, or they expanded government programs, or they added government programs. But the problem with government is they knew that ARPA money was short-term dollars. It wasn't meant to recur forever. Right. They knew there was going to be an end to it. So they added all these employees and all these programs that were legacy programs. You were going to have to pay them forever. So they did this knowing that someday someone was going to have to pay the piper. And then what happened, they knew it was going to end, but then they got lucky. They got lucky because they said to themselves, the conversation probably went like this: you know what? One of these days we're going to have to stop the spending because that ARPA money coming down from the feds isn't going to be there. And then they went, oh, well, look at that. Look at all this property tax revenue coming in. Yeah. And they said, no, we don't have to end those programs. Oh, there's more property tax revenue than we possibly imagined. So what did they do? They doubled down on stupid. They added even more employees. They doubled down on these government programs. They added more government programs, expanded the government programs, thinking that they solved their problem. And all during the while they were just creating another problem, an affordability problem here in the state of Florida.
Well, you look at 100,000 people. You mentioned, we've been mentioning Flagler County, 100,000 population. They're towns. They're towns that spend less money than that combined county does. Yeah. And I'm shocked with it. And I sit there and go, and they have resources. We don't have that there. We don't have jobs. We don't have any business move. We've cut stuff. We've turned around and said we're going to put more expenses on. And I looked at him and I said, God, this may shock you. Do you know Flagler County got called out 6% unemployment?
No.
It's shocking to me that people don't understand that, and they don't see that it goes hand in hand with the way they've set up that government. The employment of Flagler County, the largest and highest paid employee, is the government.
Yep.
That's a serious problem when you have a county like that. They're over 90% now of property tax dependent. If we do get a property tax cut there, that county's devastated. Now, let me ask you this. What made you start doing this and looking into the counties? What made you take the CFO position and start really going out to the counties and calling them out?
I think I just get aggravated at local governments collecting revenue that they're not supposed to collect. Like, I'm fine. I have businesses. I'm not hurting for money, so it doesn't hurt me. What bothers me is when I see other people struggling, and they're struggling because of the reason that government is being fiscally responsible. You know, I'm a home builder by trade. I do not develop, so I'm not a developer. I owned a mortgage company for a long time, so I actually used to underwrite people's loans, and they used to call me up and like, why did my property taxes go through the roof? And they got to such a point, it was like, okay, somebody needs to call out the government on this. So I viewed this as an opportunity to just sort of shine the light on government spending at the local level. People were asking me to do the state. State's actually pretty fiscally responsible and frugal with their tax dollars. It's the local government where we're seeing all the waste in.
Well, the state has the accountability, and plus, who do you come to when you need money in your county? You go to the state.
Yeah.
And the state usually goes to the country. The thing about COVID, it bypassed the state and it sent it directly to counties, and that's when counties got creative and started saying, hey, we can manipulate this money and put it in our general fund. That's where I noticed it. What is your favorite part of the job of being CFO?
The most rewarding part of the job is working with law enforcement, with my law enforcement, local law enforcement, to do these sting operations to help put these online child sex predators behind bars. That is the most rewarding. That is like something I can see, feel, it's tangible. Doing press conferences, holding up the mug shots of these scumbags that we're putting away because they were, a 65-year-old trying to have meet up with a 13-year-old for sex. That's the most rewarding. I love being state fire marshal. I love working with our first responders. I love giving them the resources that they need. I love protecting our fire men and women against things like occupational cancer hazards, giving them the equipment that they need so they can detox after a shift. But I'm going to be honest, one of the things that I really enjoy is diving into these budgets. And then it's because, look, budgets are we're in an affordability crisis right now in the state of Florida. Everyone is concerned about affordability. No one ever draws the conclusion that one of the reasons why it's unaffordable is because of government itself. Now, when you talk about budgets, you most people's eyes glaze over with boredom, right? But I do it in such a way where I believe I'm somewhat entertaining, passionate, and I'm able to get a very complex issue across in such a way that the lay people can understand just how bad that local government is doing. So that's why I said earlier that those are my three big things that I really enjoy being with the state and with this job as CFO, and I wouldn't give this job up for anything.
Now, that's what I was going to ask you about. You were appointed into the position after the former CFO went to Congress, ran for Congress, and won a special election. You've announced recently you're rerunning. You're going to run again, and you're seeking a first term. Actually.
Technically a first term,
technically
yes.
a first term. So you could seek another one after that.
Correct.
But you're going to go and run for another term as CFO. What are some of the things that on your second term you want to focus on and see occur in your position?
So that's a really good question. I would love the ability, and I'm working with the legislature right now to give me some additional. So first thing is I practice what I preach. My budget this year at the state is $70 million less than what it was last year. But I'm also asking for some additional money back in the form of more employees so I can hire auditors, more auditors and more CPAs so we could start doing actual forensic audits.
Wow, you are what the IRS is to the American people, to government. I love it. They get a chance to see what we do.
I want to be able to pull the check registers and draw it back to contracts to see if there's a contract that it was given to some friend of a brother of somebody where they're just fleecing the government and making money, where the person probably should be belonging in jail, not necessarily on the dais, stuff like that. And I want to we can start looking at P cards, the purchase cards, and see what they're doing with that. I want to get into the nitty gritty of where exactly they're wasting the money to the dime and hold people accountable with that. So I think that is going to be a big portion. The other thing that I want to do is I want to roll out spending scorecards. The first year of the next term, the same way that a local school district has it's an A-rated or a B-rated district, or if you go to other parts of the country, if you walk into a restaurant, it says that rated by the local Department of Health is A for cleanliness. I mean, wouldn't it be nice if there was some place that you were going to move, if people were moving into the state of Florida, or if you wanted to move to another section of the state of Florida, and you looked up and you said that, hey, I'm thinking about moving to Flagler. Let's go see what they're rated, taxpayer friendly, and it's an F. Yeah. You're like, well, maybe we should think differently.
It's like a Google review. It's like a review to a restaurant, before you walk in. Those are fundamental things. That's a pretty good idea. That's a great idea with that. And as you enter into this election cycle, what do you think is the most important thing for Floridians to pay attention to?
The affordability issue is going to be a big thing, but they need to pay attention to now I'm going to get a little political here. They need to pay attention to the promises that candidates are making, whether it is a new candidate or if it's somebody running for re-election, and actually how they perform. Because it's just way too often it tickle people's ears during campaign season, and then turn around and govern the complete opposite way when you get there.
Well, and I heard, it's funny you say that, when Kamala, the Vice President Harris, was running for president, she talked a lot about what she'd do if she was elected. And a guy next to me said, "You are elected, why aren't you doing it?" And she just got stunned and couldn't answer it. That's a good point to bring up for people and we get caught up in the moments so much, we don't pay attention to what they're really saying and what they're doing and what they're doing it currently. That's why I love stuff like this. The accountability, the fire marshal, I love the part of the fire marshal part. I hadn't shared with you, my brother was one of the top burn surgeons in the world. My late brother, he passed away a few years ago. He made the comment, he had Bradenton Burn Center, and he had one in Kendall, and then he had one in Tallahassee, but he was all over the country with HCA. Augusta was the headquarters. He told me one time, he said, "You're in a great state." And I said, "What do you mean?" I was running for office, and he said, "You guys really take good care of your firemen down there.
Yeah,
you guys really pay attention to it. And whatever they're doing down there, the firemen are really protected." And he goes, "Those guys are some of the most important heroes we overlook at times." So we really appreciate what you're doing there and continuing the great service and making sure that because fires in Florida are serious. People don't realize that. They think we got a lot of water.
Look at what's happening right now with the wildfires. So far this year, we've had over 1,000 separate wildfires, and it's covered over
right now
100,000 acres.
Yeah, it's so important, but we keep that strength there. I appreciate having you come on. I look forward to having you on more shows. So I wish you luck in the election. When is the election, and what can people do to support you?
So they can go to the website, blaiseforflorida.com. It has the platform, everything that I've done in the legislature, I'm doing as CFO. But the best thing that they can do is just follow me on a lot of social media. On X, it's at GovGoneWild, Facebook, Instagram, and TikTok, it's Blaise Ingoglia. I'm constantly posting the information that we're doing, and I'm also constantly calling a lot of BS on what I see out there. Look, I'm unapologetic. I'm just going to tell it like it is. I'm here to call balls and strikes. I don't care if you're a Democrat or a Republican. If I like what you're doing, I'll praise it. If I don't, I'm going to call you out.
And that's what I've heard. I've heard Democrats turn around and go, I like this guy. I can't vote for him because I'm a Democrat, but my God, I love what he's doing. I wish we had somebody speaking up and saying something like that. And then that's when I look at him and say, hey, you got the choice to switch parties. Switch to the greatest party in the world.
And look, at the end of the day, I think the voters like people who fight. Right? People who show strength, people to fight. Look, there are people that you don't agree with politically sometimes. Look, I'll be honest, there's a lot of Republicans who actually like John Fetterman because John Fetterman stands up for what he believes, right? Yeah. But it's also the reason why we love President Trump and we love Ron DeSantis, because those guys fight. Yeah. We need more fighters in our party.
You're absolutely right. And there's a difference of fighting to create chaos and fighting for the American people. And what you've done is fought for the American people. And I appreciate that and see that. I know that the 67 counties couldn't be better watched right now, and it's just woken them up. And I think they realize, I just love the reaction when you were coming into the county and they thought, oh, we're coming in, they're going to praise us this and praise us that. And then you turned around and he said, no Republican would ever say anything negative about other Republicans.
Well, that's why they're calling me now the Jim Cantori of wasteful spending, because when I show up in the county, it's usually not good news. It's I'm usually delivering bad news for the locals there.
Well, you know what? But it's good news for the people. And
it is good news for the people.
I want to thank you for doing that and wish you luck in the campaign. Listeners, in Tampa, Orlando, Jacksonville, all these cities and counties that we deal with, that we have in our state and that we air on, we try to bring some of the most fluent and upfront shows to you. And why I was very honored, and this is one of the best shows that we've done, to have our CFO come in, is to be able to give him the voice and the opportunity to explain to you, the listeners, why he is fighting so hard for you and why the press sees him as an enemy and some of the local government sees him as an enemy. Those people that see that are the people that we need to pay close attention to in their behaviors and their intentions. Thank you for coming in today, and thank you for making Florida one of the best places and economically sound places to live, to work, to shop, and play. Have a great weekend.
Thank you, sir.
You've been listening to The Joe Mullins Show. Find out more and engage with Joe by visiting the website, themullinscompanies.com.